Hello and welcome to another video. So as you can probably see at this point, we are playing a Portal deck. I mean, why not? Portal is still a fairly good class, even in our current meta. This one I was trying to build in my own style, so this was built from the ground up myself. We are running one electromagical Rhino. I don't see any reason to really run more than one, except for the fact that I do tend to discard this by accident a couple of times, which we may see in the video, so that could be semi-interesting, I think. Of course, if you're running electromagical Rhino, Godbullet Golem is a nice card to have alongside it, especially since we also get prime artifacts as well, so Godbullet actually isn't quite as bad as what it used to be, definitely having that big damage bursts, which would be quite nice if I could get them to work, of course, which, another thing that doesn't quite happen, most of the matches seem to finish reasonably early on or are ended due to quick, easy, low-cost followers, where the big hitters really only come to serve as a blockade for the opponent. So we're going to get right into the video and check it out. Okay, so our first matchup is against Haven, of course. Eris, she's a prime one, that's for sure. So we get a reasonable hand. Excel, Icarus, Substitution. I would say this is probably your average kind of hand that you want. Being able to just play a bunch of stuff is kind of good when you are playing Portal. Of course, Hamlin actually makes this hand slightly better. It does allow us to duplicate Icarus, which is a nice way to go about things. Especially when we draw Hikarabe, which means we need a nice amount of setup before that turn. Princess Snow White. Perfect target for substitution, which does let us just send the Hamlin Two-Face for 2 damage. And now that we've got Magisteel Lion, we can actually take advantage of Icarus, Magisteel, and then a Icarus later if we so want to. And a Holy Lion Crystal is, again, a perfect target for the Icarus with an Evo. And another substitution. We're really just drawing a lot of our low-cost cards, which is what you want in the early game especially, so we're definitely not complaining about that. Now we can finally... Oh, sorry, we were 1 turn off for the Evo. For some reason I thought, 4 points Evo. Fortunately we missed that, but it's not really a big deal. We get the same sort of outcome on turn 5 regardless if we want to go with the Icarus play, or we just wanted to set up the Hikarabe. Either way would have been fairly decent. But we do decide to just set up with everything we've got here. Getting things going quickly and effectively. Going first definitely threw me for a second there. It happens, we're only human, everyone makes mistakes. Globe of the Stairways, we finally get to see that come down, and a Mori. Bit late now, you really want those early. And a Snow White, another great substitution target. But I do decide to use the Hikarabe instead. Mainly because keeping the substitution I thought was probably just slightly better at the moment. Plus the artifact draw was going to be really important to get, and since next turn I would have been out of resonance, I would much prefer to be in resonance overall, so I think that was definitely the way to go over that whole turn. Peace Weaver. So this is a Holy Lion Haven by the looks of things, of course. We should have probably noticed that with the first Holy Lion Crystal we saw, but I guess sometimes you just don't see everything. So Star Torrent, looking to go for a full board clear. And now it's just time to throw our Prime Artifact down. It's a 5/5 body, which is a little difficult to banish, normally. And will force removal. Pure Annihilation is a really good way to deal with it though. Not a card I expected to see from the Holy Lion Crystal deck at all. So we can get our Excel down, plus our Analyzing Artifact, giving us another draw this turn. And it's an Entity. Not the card I personally want, but definitely not a bad one. So we can start flooding our deck with some artifacts while extending our board to really put that pressure down on these right now, where we want them. Of course, they have played a few decent cards, and Darkshon is a perfect way to clear this mess up. Of course, that does leave it very open to Excel or Substitution. And Sister of the Sword isn't much help. So they are spending a few cards that they probably don't want to. So take the Substitution play, trying to hold on to at least one of these ancient artifacts, just to get that value for the very moment. Plus, setting the puppets up is going to be fairly helpful. So there's another Holy Lion Crystal. They're still only at 2 drops, which means they should have only just transitioned into 4/4s. Which at this stage, we still have enough cards to deal with. And a Manga Legacy. Probably not the best way to use this, but at the time I thought it was pretty good. It does put a big threat on board and force them to pretty much play their Holy Lion Crystals, especially since they haven't played a Holy Lion Temple of any kind, meaning they aren't really gaining much value out of these crystals as they really should. Pure Annihilation again. Looks like they're really booking those in this matchup. Neapolitan Entity. I really would have loved to have got my Rhino as a play. It would have been pretty good in this matchup, honestly, because obviously their endless kind of plays and then my endless plays would have been a fairly decent counter to each other. We are in Resonance. We can set up our entity and we can just throw a random puppet to the board. Since we are going to discard everything in our hand anyway, we may as well stack it while we have the chance. And it's not a bad draw, double analyzing an Ancient and a Magna Legacy. Finally, they get a Holy Lion Temple onto the board. Or Temple of the Holy Lion, same difference basically. Really aiming to kill me off by the looks of it, going with these 4s everywhere. Pushing super hard. Fortunately, not going to be much help with them, especially since our Legacy is going to completely wipe their board, and we can just go straight to the face for 4 damage with any kind of setup we want. These analyzings are really going to do some work. No! Pitfall, not a bad target. And again, going for the Lion Crystals. I mean, they don't really have much of a choice. They really want to survive. So they need to throw those crystals out as soon as physically possible. And we can just go face for 4 damage, get this Hamlin off, really start to set this board up, and then discard everything we're just not going to need. So, a complete board, a completely new hand, our opponent having 2 cards, of which are probably a Lion Crystal and maybe something else.
I have lost.
And that draw, obviously, not going to help them at all. So I'm not exactly sure how long this game was. I'm thinking since it was Blood, it was fairly quick. I did play most of these games earlier in the day before recording this, so it does make me hard to remember exactly how some of these matches played out. But either way, if this is longer, I apologize. Hopefully you guys will stick around and watch it. If it's not longer, it should finish about normal time at around the 10-minute mark. So we'll just have to wait and see how this match plays out. Our hand is pretty decent. Hamlin, Icarus, and Substitution all working pretty well in tandem with each other. All we need now would be a mecha soldier thingy, whatever it is. I forgot now. Verdant soldier. I'm really bad at remembering names sometimes when I need to. And Excel just isn't the card we want, but we can get rid of this quite easily now. Set up our little puppet for later, and Icarus gets to stick around for another turn. Waltz, King of Wolves. I don't mind seeing that card. It's nice to see a new card come down, especially since we don't really get to play any. So we get our Hamlin, duplicate our puppet. This is going to let us remove this 3/2. And then we basically just go face. If Icarus can stick around even just one more turn, we would get really good value out of it with an Evo. Don't know whether we will get that chance, but we're at least going to try for it. So there is their Blood Moon, which means Icarus is going to stick around. They're either very naive or they're really pushing hard to get these onto the board. Because letting us set up like this is madness for a normal player. Especially since this board now is pretty much perfect. Blood doesn't tend to be able to go wide, so removing a wide board isn't easy, which is why playing these ancient artifacts is pretty acceptable, especially when we have a Saphira for next turn on 6 if they do manage to do anything, which will be a guaranteed 4 damage. So we don't need much damage at all to win this. We will be just short, I think, with this Evo from our opponent. We will only be 4 damage off lethal. Well, sorry, 2 damage off lethal, because Hamlin, of course. And there is our Deus Ex Machina. I do decide to forego putting them at 2 health. Prioritizing getting us on board now while we have the chance. Since we're not going to discard our hand this turn, it does mean that these Saphiras at least have a chance to be valuable. Being able to use them just as a 4-6 rush isn't always a bad thing. Of course, our opponent doing what they can. Belf, pretty decent play. Doesn't do very well against this Deus Ex Machina as a trade here. Both being removed. And of course, substitution is a pretty decent draw. Even though I think a Saphira probably would have been better. I could have played Saphira, played out the Acceleratium, and at least kept a good follower on board. Which would have been definitely better thinking about it in hindsight. But as they say, hindsight is 20/20. So we can pretty easily get rid of this. I mean, we have all the tools to do so, so why not? And now it's just a matter of getting the cards we actually want. Which in this case is just pretty much artifacts. While building our board up that our opponent just can't deal with. So again, going really wide because I know that Blood has a hard time dealing with wide boards. Not many people run things like Reach of the Archdemon, so they're focusing on single target removal for the most part. Kind Queen Vampire, not a bad choice, especially with an Evo that is going to get them 5 health back. A pretty decent amount of value there. Of course, that does almost instantly lose to our Manga Legacy, which is great. Magna Legacy does a wonderful job for any of you guys who don't know, clearing out followers based on artifact damage. So, for every artifact destroyed, we get 1 damage point, which is great. And again, another good way to remove things while setting up for our Resonance turn and going face. And God Bullet Golem, definitely not a bad card to get now. Of course, they do have to deal with this immediately. And we don't really have anything decent. I was hoping we'd get a really good card that would just tie out the game, as Saphira for example, but I think since we are only running 2, I believe, I don't know if we're running 3, I can't remember exactly how many I put in this deck. If we're only running 2, we have already lost them, which is a little disappointing, but this is why we have things like God Bullet and a nice little bit of setup. And getting the ward out pretty much guarantees that they can't kill me. So it worked out really well. So unfortunately we didn't get to look at some of the more interesting things in this deck. I definitely want to cover a deck in the future where we do get to use the Electromagical Rhino to its full extent, being able to just use it heavily, really well. I just want to give it a go, but unfortunately this video isn't going to be the one. But if you guys want to try this deck out, of course the deck list will be in the description below. You can hit that like button and subscribe for more content, and I will catch you guys next time. See ya.